Pursuit of Growth show, where we hold candid conversations with fascinating individuals from all walks of life, where we learn about their passions, successes, failures, and lessons learned, and how they apply personal growth to their lives. We always end every conversation with key takeaways that we can all implement to better ourselves and those who live around us. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and good buddy Greg, but as you can see, there's a few hitchhikers on this episode. We're going to have something a little bit different for the audience today. It is February 16th, the month of love and cupids and hearts and candy, and we have our significant others here. So Greg, how's it going? How's it going so far with this train wreck of an episode that we have coming up?
Well, Sammy, I think this is going to be no holds barred, perhaps the greatest and or worst Pursuit of Growth show that we've ever put together. But I'm going to go ahead and have high expectations that we're going to knock this out of the park. And ultimately, this show is going to go where no Pursuit of Growth show has gone before. And as everyone sees, we're joined by two special individuals, as Sammy alluded to, our significant others. So I would like to welcome Leah Whitley, my girlfriend, and Cynthia Gonzalez, Sammy's wife. Ladies, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you for having us.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here. And Cynthia, I'm just going to start out with you. Quick question. Tell us, how long have you and Sammy been married? And also, how long have you been dating before you were married?
We were dating almost as long as we've been married. So we have been married for 11 years last month, but we dated for about 6 or 7 years prior to that. So I've been married 11 years, but we have been together for, what is that, like 18 years, which makes me sound really old.
Notice all the gray hair.
We met when we were 12, so.
And what's crazy is I've known you your entire relationship, and I would not have guessed it has been 18 years. That's incredible.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it feels like 45. All right, so same question, going back to the two of you, Greg and Leah. Leah, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you find Greg? How did Greg find you? Give us the deets.
Who am I? I'm Leah, as y'all said. Where did I come from? I am a local Texan, so born and raised here, long time. Where did I find Greg? That is a good question. I actually found him on a dating app that a friend of mine recommended. And I got on there for entertainment purposes, and I found him, which was
the ultimate entertainment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And we've been dating almost 10 months.
Nice. Almost
10 months. So that's what I like about this episode is, so as we talk through the questions and discussion that we have, we're going to have the perspective from a couple that's been together almost 2 decades and a couple that's been together for almost 1 year. So 2 very different perspectives and 2 very different, seasons of our relationship. So I'm really excited, for this conversation. And when you think about relationships, we've talked about this before. You can ask 100 people what makes a great relationship, and likely you're going to get 100 different answers. Now, if you do your research, you'll find, however, that most relationships experts, quote unquote, believe that relationships that truly excel do well in 6 core value areas. And so those areas are trust, clear communication, respect, support, personal boundaries, and unconditional love and service. So as we have this discussion on this episode of the Pursuit of Growth show, we're going to focus on a handful of questions that touch on these core values. We're going to share our thoughts, our perspectives, our experiences, again, from a couple that's been together for 18 years and a couple that's been together for 10 months. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation to jump into. And Sammy and Cynthia, we'll get started with you. So the first question to ask is going to be in the realm of communication. And so I think whether it's a romantic relationship, a working relationship, friends, you name it, communication is understood to be a key element of good relationships. So I'm curious, like, what habits, maybe routines, have the two of you developed that really help you guys remain clear and aligned on the everyday communications that you need to have with the family, and also those bigger issues that come up in life? So share a little bit about what that means to you in terms of communication.
All right. Well, we talked about these questions beforehand. So, as good show preps, we did take a little bit of notes as well. But as we started to dig into it, I didn't want to get too like big picture. I kind of also wanted to stay true to what our audience has received from us in the past too, some tactical things. So we're going to share a mix of those. But I think actually I'm going to let Cynthia start first and let her talk a little bit about communication first, and then I'll go next.
So I think,
your thoughts.
yeah, I think it right, as we've talked about how long Sammy and I have been together, I kind of feel like we grew up together almost in a way. Granted, we were adults when we met, but we were very young adults, and in my eyes, we weren't real adults. So we kind of learned adulting together, and I think that our communication to each other has been refined over time, and certainly changed quite a bit once you introduce kids and all of that into the mix. And I think, so just some of the things that we have found beneficial. One of the things that we did was we implemented a shared calendar. So between the two of us, we have the shared calendar where we're able to keep everything up to date. This can be, our kids' sports schedules. It can be things going on at their school. It can be Sammy's, whiskey and wings guys night. It can be my mimosas ladies brunch, whatever it is. But whenever there's some new activity, we throw it on the shared calendar. We both get the alert. Periodically we'll get it. I throw something on there, I'll get a text. It's like, oh, what's this, as we throw it on there. But we're really great about putting everything onto that shared calendar. And then one thing that I think I've learned to improve upon over the years that Sammy's always been really great at is not overly kind of committing ourselves to different activities without talking to each other first. So I think that that was a big one too, is we have a lot of mutual friends, but then we've got, I've got friends that are maybe more kind of exclusively my friends, same for him. So at times there were challenges where we want to get together, want to throw an activity on there. I feel like we do a really good job now communicating with each other before we commit to something as a family. And again, I think, through that communication, through utilizing that shared calendar, that's been a really great tool for the two of us.
Yeah, I think also one other thing just to piggyback on that is that communication aspect, like in general, a little bit bigger picture, is that there's a lot of times where we don't agree on things. And I think over the course of time, oh, we lost your camera, Greg, just FYI. So over the course of time, there's a lot of things that we have agreed upon. There's things that we hadn't agreed upon. I'm waiting for you to come back.
Yeah, keep going. We're still here.
I know, I can hear you. But over the course of time, one of the things that we've done is we've realized that we don't always have to agree, but we need to align. And I think that's something like a shared understanding of where we're going to be aligned is one of the key elements. I think that's a takeaway that I've learned over the years. Because again, I think when we first started dating, I don't even know if we were texting very much. Like people weren't even texting that much. So now like that communication has kind of changed a lot of things too. So, but just showing the longevity of it, right? We're younger, and then we've grown older, and now we have some different priorities. But aligning, you don't always have to agree, but aligning helps a lot.
Absolutely.
All right, Greg, I'm going to kick that one back over to you.
All right, Leah, would you like to go first? Or you want me to jump in?
I will go first. So I think like we tend to be over communicators. Probably, I know for me, like a lot has that in my job, like I have to over communicate. So that kind of like transfers over, and there's a lot of like moving parts with us and our routines and our schedules, and plus throw my son in the mix. So we literally, like, this sounds totally dorky whenever like I say it out loud, but this is what we do. Every week we actually sit down with our paper calendars. We're not as sophisticated as y'all with our like Google shared calendar, but with our paper calendars, like, okay, what do you have going on this week? And like, when do you have one too? Yeah. So, and like literally like writing it out, and this is what we have. And then also like communication, I think a lot, text throughout the day, often.
Absolutely. And I think what was really helpful for us is when we first started dating, we had conversations about like good expectations. And I think being that we're both older now, starting this relationship, we're not 17, bringing in a lot of like, craziness and ignorance into a relationship. We realized that, Sammy, to steal your word, aligned, we needed to make sure that we were aligned in the right ways. And we both agreed that communication was going to be something that was going to be critical. And if we were going to get that right, it was going to make our relationship so much easier and more seamless. And so to her point, we sit down and we plan out our weeks together. We get our calendars and schedule things out months in advance. We're talking throughout the day to talk about, hey, this is an opportunity that's come up. Is this something that we should put on the calendar? Or is this something we need to say no to? And it's just been a really, I think, big help for us to have that open line of communication. And then the last thing that I'll share is we're also very good about communicating the bad things and the things that we're challenged with and the things that aren't going so well in terms of just other aspects of our lives, whether it's work, whether it's just outside variables that we don't have control over. We're pretty upfront saying, hey, this is something that I'm dealing with right now, and I just want to make you aware that this is an issue that I've got going on, and how can we support each other? So
That's
I feel
interesting.
like that's been something that's been pretty cool.
Interesting you mentioned that about the work thing because we both work at home. So like, this is my office, and she works like just down the hall. And I think we see each other. We joke that we see each other in the break room, which is the kitchen, for lunch, and then we come back to our offices. So I spend a lot of my time in here, and she spends a lot of time out there. So we don't really talk too much about work stuff. And I think that might be an area in which we've gotten better over the course of time compartmentalizing. Is that work stuff? I don't really share a ton of stuff about work unless it's like a little frustrating or whatever. But for the most part, I think that we compartmentalize stuff too, and that's been helpful in our communication over the past two because it hasn't been all just like stress, like worrying about stuff all the time and like just projecting that out either. It's kind of just close the book on the day, close the book on a subject, and then we're kind of moving on to other stuff too.
Yeah.
I think too, though, it's like communicating the wins, not just the frustrations without the day, but like the wins too.
Yeah, we do a ritual that, if I'm honest, we don't do it every single night, but I guarantee you we're probably close to 90% where we share our three things. So it's our three things we're grateful for that day. And it's actually interesting because sometimes I'll try to think in my mind, okay, what is Leah going to say? And almost to a T, she surprises me with something. And a lot of times it's something that I would have no idea even happened because it was something that occurred to her in her life when I wasn't around that day. And then we actually also do this with her little boy, except for with him, we call it our three favorite things. And it's been really interesting to kind of hear him talk about what his three favorite things were. And of course, now he's adopted the habit of saying everything as an all-encompassing kind of cheat. But we're kind of forcing him to know you got to narrow it down to three. That's what makes it special. And so that's been kind of a fun thing for us to do. And I think that goes into communication because it kind of opens up, to your point, the wins that we have and the things that we're grateful for every day.
Yeah, that's a great topic. And I think a lot of people I'd love to hear some more hacks on how people do their communications in their relationships as well. So hopefully we can get some feedback on that too. The next question that I wanted to toss us over to is a little bit different. And I'm going to scroll up to see my notes. And it is finances. So those are really one of the biggest sources and struggles for couples and just for people in general is approaching the subject of money and finances. Specifically, I think there's different phases. There's the early part of your relationship, and then there's the latter part, the middle part, and then the latter part too. So I think we'll be able to share some good perspectives here, but I'd love to hear. So let's start with y'all. Since y'all are newer in your relationship, we'd love to hear a little bit about some of those different types of financial struggles, challenges, and successes you're having.
Yeah, well, can I jump in real quick and then let you run with it?
I know where you're going with this. I think you're going to mention something.
Like my money's my money and your money gets spent on me. Like I don't know.
It's pretty much it. Her money's her money, and mine just goes wherever she wants it to. But it's interesting you mentioned about the stress with finances. So this week, Sammy and I are releasing one of our 1 Minute Matters blogs about finances. And there's a recent Capital One survey that identified that 73% of Americans rank financial stress as their number one stress in their life. 73% of people in America, according to this particular study. So it just shows you this is something serious and something that people should put some thought and effort into. And I think this is a kind of a prime example of when we started the show, we mentioned the two of you have been together for much longer than the two of us. So we're going to have very, very different seasons of where we're at in this. And for Leia and I, it's the point where we're now starting to say, okay, what does that look like for us in terms of how are we going to start looking to say, if we're going to continue to come together and, actually form a relationship that's going to go on forever, potentially. Cynthia, I know that's a question you've been dying to continue to ask. But if that's the plan that we're on, our finances have got to come together, right? And so we've got to look to see how do we approach certain things, buying homes together, savings, how do we approach debt, how do we approach all these different aspects. So we've got to start putting some plans together. And one of the things that Leah and I have talked about is, while we both have some pretty basic, savvy financial knowledge, it's going to be so beneficial for us to sit down with a financial planner to be able to help us say, look, these are the goals that you guys have. These are the things that we need to start putting in place for you to actually get there. And I think for both of us, that's going to include sacrifice, and it's going to include kind of changing our lifestyles a little bit because we're used to having our income and our expenses being completely separated. So when you bring that together, there's just a lot of different things that happen. So Leah, I'd love to hear your explanation, elaboration, or more thoughts on that.
I'm just going to give you the short version. That basically means that I can't buy as many shoes.
Hint the word sacrifices.
Right. Yeah, he's going to throw that word sacrifice in there and then make you believe it so that whenever you do want to buy those pair of shoes, you don't anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I think this would be something that I think our audience will really appreciate is kind of hearing from the two of you. So you've been married again for over a decade. You've got 2 kids, which that's another variable that goes in the mix on how you approach finances. So what are some of the best practices that you guys have done? Or even if you've got some pain points that you want to share, what are some of the challenges or successes you guys have had?
You want me to start it? Because I'll give some background.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with this one because I wanted to have a little bit of background put out there. So I think your upbringing brings a lot into the equation when specifically whenever you're starting a relationship and also getting like kind of older into your relationship. So the way that she managed money traditionally in her family was different, I believe, than the way that we manage money in my family. And so combining those efforts and then like melding the two together is something that has evolved over time as well. When I first met her, I was pretty much flat broke. Greg, you knew me back then.
That's how you knew I really liked him.
Yes.
Yeah. Sammy and I were the broke brothers.
So one of the things that we
I was a sugar mama.
Yeah, she took care of me for sure. And so that was one of the things that like I actually learned a lot from the way that she went about managing her money and using her money and being kind of more resourceful with what she had. And then I think one of the tactics that I've pulled out of this is that we don't have a real, and this is going to sound crazy to some people, they're going to be yelling at the monitor, but we don't really have a very true set family budget. Like there is not a line item to budget. I try and get us to do it all the time and it's so difficult and we get frustrated and we're like, nope, just whatever. But we're really good. And again, our financial planner, which we have, is going to go crazy when he hears this, but is that we don't really have like a set budget. It's kind of like we utilize the 2 buckets of money that she has and I have. But again, it goes back to that communication. It goes back to the if there's a purchase that's quote unquote a big purchase, and in my eyes, if I'm getting to about the $200 mark, I'm like, all right, let me run this by Cynthia. Like maybe, I don't know if there's extra money that we spent on, I don't know, a kid's dance recital or something like that I don't know about. But we go a lot on gut feelings and just that open lines of communication too that's helped us kind of avoid some of those really big pitfalls. But I'll turn it over to Cynthia and then I'll finish up with a different point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, what he said is spot on. And I always know, right, when we're getting to the point of too much, it'll be just a communication of, oh, I see you bought 7 things on, Amazon. And what I'm guilty of is it's with the kids, right? You see everything that you want to buy for them. But to his point, I think we do a really good job of, if there's things, we're not in the weeds, right? So as he wants to buy things here or there, I want to, it is what it is. We've got a good, and as he says, we don't have this solid budget, but we have a good understanding of our spending. And we know, and have learned through communicating once we get to that point where it's like, okay, this is a big enough purchase that that this is something I should run by Sammy or that he should run by me before I just kind of jump into it. I think another kind of key point, and this is probably where Sammy was going next, so I'll just say a snippet of it and then I'll turn it back over to him. But it took us a while of trying to figure out how do we budget our money, what do we do. As he mentioned, we kind of had different philosophies growing up. I am definitely, I would say, more reserved when it comes to savings, when it comes to investing. I am less likely to take risks. And then Sammy is definitely on the other spectrum. So it definitely created unique challenges as we've, combined incomes, we've introduced children, and kind of how do you manage that when you've got, and I hate to say extremes, but almost, right, 2 different extremes, if you will. And I think, at this point we have brought in a financial advisor. And I think that that's a key component of ensuring that you have your finances set up successfully. He does a really good job of understanding, right? They know where I'm at, they know where he's at, and then they're that kind of centralized person that really doesn't have an opinion one way or the other, but can kind of lay out the facts and get us to where we need to be. And I think, one of the things that I've struggled with is as we continue to save and invest and do this and do that, I need that kind of, I need that SME, that subject matter expert, to say, yes, you guys are on track. If you continue doing what you're doing, here's where you'll be at 55. Here's where you'll be at 65. Heck, maybe we could retire at 50 or 55. So I think that bringing in that financial advisor was a huge piece that I know really helped me, given we have kind of different philosophies when it comes to saving and investing.
Speaking of risk, Cynthia, has Sammy shared with you that he invested y'all's retirement in Bitcoin?
Oh, yeah.
She knows now. She watches the markets with me.
No, in fact, what's funny is, as you say that, since he has invested some in Bitcoin, and it's not this substantial amount, but the amount of time that he has spent kind of learning, and he'd be like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And I kind of joke, I'm like, well, why didn't you? Because, it's not very much, in the grand scheme of things, it's not very much money in there. So why didn't you just do it? Like, you're spending all of this time, researching this over, say, $100 or $500 or whatever it is. Like, why didn't you just make the move? And he's like, well, it's about learning, right? So, but to me, I'm like, you're spending all of this time and you're like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And I'm like, for what? $30? Like, what would it have made you? $30?
So I've missed a few times on some really big returns there. But no, I think the last point I wanted to make on that, and then I'll kick it back over to y'all for some further insight, is that I think that threshold. So as we've gotten older, that's one of the thresholds, is that the reason why I don't jump into some of those different big investments, it's that I have to answer for the investment that I make, and be it if I want to go buy, I don't know, let's just say a new bike, right? Or, or make a financial investment into crypto or whatever it is. I have to go and explain what I utilize that money for versus just taking it and putting it somewhere where I know that it's going to be better for her. So if I say I want to take, $5,000 and I want to go invest it in something, I know that she would first default to, why don't you put that $5,000 in savings? Because that's her default nature, versus what is the return on investment of that $5,000 and lay out the strategy that you developed for understanding why you think that's going to be the return. And that's the way my brain works, and that's the way her brain works. So as I've gone through my research and through my stuff, I think that's where it comes back to communication, where it's all right, I've done this X amount of research. I feel this way because of this. And then she'll say well, why didn't you just do it? And it's okay, well, that makes me feel better, that I know that I've justified, not only to her, but to myself, that I have enough knowledge on the subject to be able to then say, okay, this is a worthwhile investment, at least in my eyes. And that's something I was going to suggest to y'all and to the listeners is I think one of the most beneficial things that we've ever done is find and seek advice from people that have been there before. So yeah, finding the financial planner is great. Find someone that's an independent third party that can help guide and steward you. And then also finding someone that has like that same kind of mentality that you have as far as like the way that you feel like you want to invest, and then go and learn from them. Her dad's a really big saver, so he pinches pennies anywhere he can. So I go to him for that type of advice. And then I go to my other friends or other people or experts that may be more on the risky side. And I pull some of that to then get this mix of where I feel like I am. And then I share it with her. So that's kind of my philosophy on like sharing and communicating about finances.
Yeah, and I think ultimately too is one of the principles that historically I did a very poor job of, and as I got older, I started really getting things under control, and that's living below my means. And so once I did start earning some money, I just went all the way overboard and was just putting money in places that didn't need to go, buying things I did not need to buy, and caused myself a lot of challenges as a result of doing that. And so I think combine, no matter how much wealth you're earning, if you can combine that with a principle of living moderately, and then to your point, Sammy, seeing where you can say, okay, how can I start not just saving, but how can I start increasing my revenue? So how can I start using investing? How can I start getting passive income streams coming in? How can I start going to other people that know much more than I do and learn some of the different tactics on, instead of paying so much in taxes, how can I start making taxes work for me? Right? Like there's so much knowledge that's out there if we just take the time to actually learn. And then I think the big key is actually apply it. But I think your feedback was spot on. Not only go to like the financial advisor type person, but go to people that have been there. And I think that's going to be an opportunity for us. And that's something that I hadn't put just a ton of thought in, but I think you're dead on. That's a good way to roll.
Mentors, man.
Say that again.
Oh, I was going to say mentors. I mean, it's a common thing that we see throughout all of our conversations with other people, but I can't tell you the amount of wisdom that's out there.
Yeah.
I think there's naturally like, you always hear there's like two people like in a relationship, like one's normally a spender, one's normally a saver. So I know it sounds like Cynthia's the saver. Naturally, like I'm a spender. And again, like you said, Sammy, like it comes back from my, like the way like I grew up. And I had two different households growing up. And so they both kind of did things a little bit differently. And so just taking time as an adult now at almost 40, like to figure that out, like this is how I should do things a little bit differently. But
I'm kind of a hybrid. I'm a saver, then I spend a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel the need to say, like, if I buy something, I'm like, but Sammy, I got it 40% off. There's a 40% off sale. And he's like, it's okay. Again, it was a $25 item. Like, it's okay that I don't need to know that you got it 40% off. Like, it's not a big, but I'm like proud of the fact, right, that I got it at 40% off versus full price.
I've never been, I know there's some couples that do this, and then we can switch topics, Greg, but there's some couples that do this that have their own separate kind of bank account, if you will, or their own separate line item in the budget. Like, this is my play money. I do whatever I want with this X amount. And to each his own, but we've never done that. So like we just have one account and just dump everything in there. And then we filter it out by whatever else, savings and then investments and yada, yada, that kind of stuff. Do y'all have, what's your thoughts, I should say, on what works best, do you think, for y'all? Have y'all given that any thought?
We actually haven't had that conversation.
No, I can tell you what I do. Like I am in like, let's just call it a rebuilding phase of my finances. And so I separated, I have 3 accounts and I separated things out. So like one, child support for Pierce goes into, and it's his child support, his daycare comes out of that, different things come out of that particular account. Then I have another account that is basically, because of what I do for a living, I get like a car allowance. So things for my vehicle come out of that account, things that I get for my vehicle come into that account. And then I have like a bills, let's just call it a little bit shoe money, or like my mom calls it, crazy money is what she calls it. That all like is my main source. So I have it broken down like that. And have even thought about like adding an additional like savings, and that's just for me personally, because I'm such a visual person.
Yeah.
So if I can label that account like here's his whatever account and all these different things, then I can, every time I look at it to check it, then it's just a mental note for me personally. So that's what's helped me.
It's interesting. I used to do that. I used to do the same thing with 2 different accounts. I would split it up just to visually have that kind of stuff, like bills and stuff in one, and then the other one. Eventually, I got to the point where I just closed the other one. But yeah, I think that was very helpful for me too.
Yeah, and I've got my basic checkings account. I've got my long-term saving account, and then I've got my emergency saving account that I'm constantly every month putting some money into. But I think, to answer your question, Sammy, when we talk about like that's going to be a big, I think, goal for us. In fact, it's a goal we already have written down that we need to start identifying how that's going to look moving forward. And so we'll be putting a lot of plans in place. And quite honestly, hearing your testimony on kind of how you guys approach things is helpful. And so I think that's just going to be part of our growth together in terms of doing that. But I think what's going to work for us is I can promise you we're going to be intentional about it. And we're not just going to approach it as, we'll just see what happens and just kind of go from there. Like, we realize it's a big thing. And so we need to be smart about it. We need to make sure that we're both comfortable with the decisions that we make. And so we've definitely got some work to do about that, but I'm excited about it. We got some good stuff coming up.
All right, Greg, I think I took finances. You take the next one.
All right. So I think right now the next question goes to support and encouragement. So we all know healthy relationships need to have circumstances where the couple does very well together, but it's extremely important to be able to do things apart. So the question is, what do you guys do to encourage each other to do things without each other?
Like mimosas for mom.
Like mimosas for moms. That's funny because I just kind of like
whiskey and wings.
Whiskey and wings. That was that's a legitimate thing that he does. Whatever I said, the mimosas and moms, or I just kind of went with that. I don't have a dedicated mimosas and moms group, but it sounds like that is a key takeaway from today's show, is there must be a mimosas and moms get together on a monthly basis. So I bet
the Twitter account will be active in about 10 minutes.
No, but I think that, to your point, I think it's important to, and especially as, again, I joke how, we were pretending to adult when we first met, and then we kind of learned how to adult together over the years. And certainly, as we got married and then introduced one child and then another child, the dynamic changes. And I think that it is easy to forget what is important to you outside of caring for your family. And I think that we do a very good job, and I'm sure Sammy will speak to this. He has to push me a little more at times, but I think that we do a really good job of ensuring that we have time away to focus on what's important for us. So a huge piece for me is over the past year, really it started with when coronavirus and COVID first hit, and they went through kind of, here's all of the conditions and the risks for someone that's going to have severe, a severe impact from it. I was overweight and it scared me. So my motivation was, I got to start running. So then I started running, but I didn't really change my diet. Then I hurt my knee. Then Sammy bought me a Peloton because he knew that was something that was important to me and I couldn't run every day. So I went to rehab, fixed my knee, started riding my Peloton, changed my nutrition. And that's a huge focus of my life day, is that always, without fail, make time to fit in a workout, whether it's cardio, whether it's lifting weights. But that's me. That's what's important for me and my own personal kind of well-being. And just as an example, and kind of how we kind of push each other and ensure we get what's important, is just this morning. So we have this very set routine of Sammy gets up in the morning, he does his workout. Right when he's walking out of our workout room, I'm going in. His next job is time to get the kids up. He gets them up, he gets them dressed, he makes sure they brush their teeth, he gets their breakfast ready, all while I'm doing my morning workout. And then by the time I come out, kids are sitting at the table, I do their hair, then we're off to school. But this morning, we're standing there, and one of the... What was that?
I said Sammy did their hair this morning. No.
No,
I
that would
can't.
not happen.
I can
He
do
has
hair.
learned because I used to travel a lot for work, and so yes, that was one of his key responsibilities.
Ponytail master.
Yes. Which now it's one with super straight hair, one with super curly hair. So two different dynamics.
I'm gonna open
Very
a salon.
Mm-hmm. So this morning, one of the things that I always try to do is before I hop on the bike to ride, the girls are usually in the bathroom. You know, they're about to brush their teeth or do whatever, and I run in and give them both kisses, and then I run into the workout room. So I'm standing there talking to Ava, and Sammy's like, "Oh, Pico." And so all of you know, Pico is our elderly dog. He is about somewhere between 15 and 16. He has a lot of health conditions right now and is slowly kind of going downhill. But he has a lot of stomach issues, and he had already been outside, but it all of a sudden hit him that he had to go, right? So Sammy's like, "Oh, Pico," and I looked down, and it was obvious that he was about to try to essentially
He shit on the floor, Greg.
poop on my feet. So I pick him up. I set him down in the bathroom. But again, this is a very old, and I'm sorry, I'm drawing the story out. But it's a very old dog.
He shit on the floor.
Weak legs, weak hips. So I set him on the tile. We've got our little child in the bathroom, right? She's like, "What are you doing?" I set him down. His legs start sprawling out because he can't hold himself up on the tile. So then I'm holding him as he goes. Keep in mind he has stomach issues, so it wasn't just like a routine bowel movement.
He shit on the floor, Greg.
So whole point of this is that happens, and then I look at my watch and I'm like, "Sammy, I gotta go. I'm meeting someone for a ride in 2 minutes." And he's like, "But there's all this shit." And I was like, "Babe, you're gonna have to clean it up. It's time for my ride." And this man said, "Okay." And I went and I hopped on my bike. And I left the door open because I felt kind of bad. So I had the door open so I could kind of like look out as I'm riding. And he marches downstairs and he gets the cleaner, he gets the paper towels, he gets the bags. Our 7-year-old is screaming louder about the poop on the floor than he is. But he did it all. So that was a very long drawn out story. But point of it is that is one of the most important things in my life right now is ensuring that I continue to work out. I've got very specific goals when it comes to my strength training, my cardio, and he knows that that's one of the most important things that I have right now. So it was one of those, just go, I've got this.
Well, Cynthia, I love that story. And if you remember, we talked at the very beginning of this episode that one of the 6 core values was unconditional love and service. Cleaning up dog shit off the floor for your partner is the prime example, so she can work out, of the prime example of unconditional love and service. So kudos to you, Sammy, for stepping up to the plate.
I won't say that it was all in a great natured attitude. I will say that I got it done, but let's just say that, I made my words with the situation out loud plenty of times.
That goes into the phrase, love is not a feeling, it's an action, even when you hate doing something.
All right, so share a little bit with you, Greg and Leia.
You didn't talk.
I can tell you, do you mind if I?
You jump in.
So I will actually tell you, one of the things on our very first date was something that he encouraged me to do. So maybe like 2 weeks. So we had spoken 2 weeks over the phone before our actual first date in person.
Where was the first date in person?
Where was our first date in person? This amazing Italian restaurant on the harbor in Rockwell on Lake Ray Hubbard called Giovanni's. And we haven't been back yet, which we should. Yeah. It honestly was amazing. But he didn't know this at the time, but I was working with a friend of mine after COVID. Anyways, no, it wasn't a long-term situation, but I had just decided, you know what, I've been a dental assistant for now almost 23 years, but I hadn't actually actively been a dental assistant for a very long time. And so went in, worked with her for a year, opportunity came up, worked with her, and I was like, you know what, this just isn't for me anymore. Had, for the first time in my life, 0 plans on exactly what I was going to do, and quit. And so that was totally out of character for me. First of all, I always have had something lined up, never had a job gap, jumped right into the next thing. but I also did health and fitness on the side. So I was like, you know what? This is the time I need to spend with my son. Like, I gave her a month, and surprisingly, she was like, you know what? You hate it here. I don't want you to hate what you do. So, like, go hang out with your parents in Florida and, like, don't come back. And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't know what to do. So, anyways, I had just gotten back from Florida. My parents were like, oh my God, like, what did you do? Like, you just quit your job. I was like, you know what? God's provided this far. Like, I'm health and fitness, like, all the way full time. That's what I'm gonna do. So I walk in. Everybody else thought I was crazy except for my roommate, one of my best friends. And then I tell Greg's like, so what are you doing? You work at the dental office, right? And I'm like, actually, I just quit. Like, so health and fitness full time. And he's like, I think that's freaking awesome. And was like so excited about it and told me like how amazing I was gonna do and so supportive. And I was like, all right. Like, so just from like the beginning, like in everything, even like the craziest ideas, most of them, he's like, all right, like, yeah, let's get a plan together and let's do it. So
I love a good plan, no doubt about it.
We're a whole book on it.
Man. Well, I'll share about Leah. Like, I think this is just one of her superpowers is being supportive. And I mean, Sammy, you and I put in a lot of work for this show and the stuff that we do at the Pursuit of Growth. And she's always been supportive with that. With my work, can get very labor intensive, lots of hours. She's always understanding when I've got to work late, and helps me to realize where I need to set boundaries to even be better. She encourages me to hang out with like my buddies and do things with my family and go bike riding with the guys, all those different types of things. So there hasn't been one time when she's like even been upset when I wanted to do something that was, that did not include her. But I can also say that it's one of those things. I think we have so much fun together, and like literally, like as opposed to being boyfriend girlfriend, we just genuinely love doing things together. That it's something that I do not take advantage of, and it's been easy because like I don't feel the need to. Like I need to escape from her and get time by myself. It's just like, yeah, but that's the truth. It's like I don't want to do that. It's almost like sometimes she's kind of pushing me to go do stuff. And I think that's super cool.
That's what I was going to say about her is like, I have to, like, I don't know how many times I've had to scold her and tell her, like, go get a massage, like, go to the salon, go do this. And she's like, no. I was like, no, you need to go. Just go out. And I got the kids. You go with your friends, go have dinner, whatever. I think sometimes some people need pushes on it too.
Yeah, and and I've seen relationships to where when the couples do things apart, there's tension and almost bitterness. And then I've seen couples that just stay together and just don't do anything fun. They don't enjoy their time together. They almost just kind of separate themselves in their house and just kind of live their own world. And I never wanted to be in a relationship like that. And so I think Leah and I both are aligned, and just again, it goes back to communication and all these things that we've been talking about. But she's always been super encouraging, and I want to be the same way with her. So to your point, Sammy, like she'll ask me, hey, next Thursday I've got, I'd like to go do dinner with so-and-so. Do you have anything on your schedule that would conflict with that? And it's like, absolutely not. Go do it and have fun, and tell them I said, what's up?
Yep. Now, I think also one of the, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought because Cynthia took a drink. What was the,
it's my fault.
It's all her fault.
I'll take a drink. Maybe it'll come back.
I thought she spilled her drink, and that's why you lost your train of thought.
No, but she didn't use a coaster inside my office. So I'm like,
Uh-oh.
He gave me one coaster and I had 2 cups. So
yes. I don't remember. What was I going with that point? It was on, independence. And I think that's one thing, especially like with the latter stages of our relationship like we are, and we have kids as well. I grew up very independent, and I grew up doing my own, I think I was doing my own laundry by the time I was like 12, and I still do my own laundry. No one else does laundry for me. And so the little things, like keeping a semblance of who you are when you're bringing yourself to a relationship. You're not making yourself the relationship. And I think that's a key component of where I see success is whenever the individuals still have a semblance of who they are, and they're bringing those best parts to the pairing. Specifically also whenever you have kids. So we parent differently as well. And so like, but I'm going to bring the way that I parent, and we align on things, but I think that's something that is a good tactic for everyone to remember too, is like, you don't have to lose yourself in the other person, lose yourself to the relationship, because I will never like change who I am to be with anyone else and be part of anything, but I will align on common goals and set values that we have together to form a great relationship. And that's what we've done over the years, because she's pretty independent as well.
Do you agree with that, Cynthia? Ditto? Well said. Say it again.
All right. So where was I? All right. Next question is probably one of my favorite questions here, is talking about keeping life interesting and fun. And I will say I don't know how long we've known you yet. It's probably been about 6-8 months now or so.
Was it June? It was sometime in the summer when we all went to dinner for the first time.
Yeah.
And then Foo Fighters.
That's right. And then we instantly road tripped it and see if you are worthy of the road trip. Yeah.
Like, let's really test her. Let's go take her on a road trip.
Big test.
It was so much fun.
So keeping life interesting and fun. As you can tell, just I think by this episode and just watching this, we're pretty goofy over here on this side. I know y'all are too. But tell us some of the ways that you come up with creative dates or simple fun things to do together.
So I actually will tell you, I think like starting off, we had like a pretty like normal date, like dinner date, right? But like date 2 and 3, that's where we really like stepped it up. So I think like we went on like a Deep Ellum brewery tour, because Greg was just like, I don't know what we're gonna do, but like I just need you, like tell me you're available on Sunday and I'll figure out something. And that's pretty much how it went. And there were like no rules. And so like he's pretty creative like that. And then I had to kind of up that, because I mean, I just did, the competitiveness in me. And so it's like, all right, have you ever been on a sailboat? No. Have you ever had a picnic? No. All right, let's do sailboat, picnic. And really what it was, this is how I won him over. I just pulled wine, pizza, wine glasses, and ice cream out of a backpack on our third date. And like, he was like, okay, yes.
Check.
He's like, here's the one.
He is a simple man. Yes.
Right? But I will say like that part of it. And then we're always just like more activities, I think. And even like, we're not scared to be silly together, karaoke night on a random Friday night with no other plans, like in the apartment. So. And
then for Christmas, I got her, it's called the Adventure Challenge. It's a book that literally has all these different types of potential dates. And the reason I say potential dates is you don't know what they are, because like a lottery ticket, you've got to scratch it off to see what you're going to do. Now, it does give you some framework of like, this is something you'll do at home. You're going to need to go to the grocery store. You're going to need to get a babysitter. Or this is something you're going to have to go out and you're going to drive around. So it gives you a couple clues, but it's been a ton of fun.
It's been so much fun.
And like, for instance, one of them we scratch off, and it was you have to go to 3 different restaurants. At one restaurant, you get an appetizer. The next restaurant you go to, you've got to get the main meal. Then you've got to go to a third restaurant and get a dessert. Sounds awesome, right? The trick was you had to come up with a unique accent and personality for each different place.
Oh, that'd be so much fun.
No.
So I was at Glorious being like, hi, good day, bud. We're over here from Scotland. This Mexican food is terrible. We need some margaritas and some queso right now. And like having to talk like that the whole time was, and even the waiter was like, where are you guys from? What the F you mean where we're from? Where are you from? I'm from Dallas, Texas, you jackass.
So naturally, I'm just gonna call you out. Naturally, that like everybody can hear us in the restaurant, and I'm like trying so hard to like keep it together and not laugh so that this like comes off like a real thing. But it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we had names, and then like one of the places we were from Boston, New Jersey, so everything was wicked smart. And it was like, hey bartender, where's that brownie we ordered? We need it now. And like just yelling at
like
people.
turning around, like looking at him, no.
She says that? No, because she was Veronica, and like she was getting after it and yelling for her drink.
I'm not nearly as good as him though, but that was fun. But I will say, I think the most, well, the other ones were fun too. But one of the great things is that like we had Pierce one time, and so it's like get all the blankets in your house, build a fort, get marshmallows, roast marshmallows in the house, and then find a romantic movie. So we're like, okay, we had Pierce. My parents were in town. We're like, hey, this is what we're doing. Y'all want to come over and join us? So literally, like, my dad and my stepmom are like, we're all getting all the blankets, pinning things up. We literally, like, I thought we were going to catch my apartment on fire. But we're roasting marshmallows underneath this, like, huge fort. And my dad's like, let's watch Lady and the Tramp. And like we all sat in my living room, like in the floor, and watched this movie and had marshmallows. And so it was a lot of fun to like get them involved too. So it was something like everybody could do.
Yeah. So I think to sum up our kind of what do we do to have creative kind of date ideas is we just try to think like what are things that we like to do for fun that are more experiences, and just put them on the calendar and do them.
And we're really big kids, I feel like. So
yeah.
Well,
how about you guys?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's such a good question to ask, because I think that it is so easy to, you get to a point in life where you're so busy with just life, right? With kids and activities and this and that it's so easy. I know at times we've gotten caught up in, right? It's just, we're kind of going through the motions of the 50,000 things we have to do, but you have to make sure that you carve out time for each other. And I know, in the past, personally, that's something that I struggled with because, right, as a mom and as a working mom, right, two working parents, I know I struggled with leaving my kids. And it's a little different now with them being in school, but, right, when they're younger, leaving them when I'm already leaving them Monday through Friday for 40 to 50 hours a week. And so I always struggled with let's go do a date night. It's like, well, but I'm already away from my kids, most of the week. And now I just have mom guilt, like if we go do something. And I think, between just as they've gotten older, it's become a little easier. And then I think too that, we are fortunate enough to have family local to where when we do want to go out for a night, we've got family here. But I think that was one of the things that I struggled with too is, because we have family here, when they would spend the night, they would spend the night let me back up. When we would go on a date, they would spend the night. So then it would turn into more of, it wasn't just a date night. It would go kind of into the weekend. So that was another struggle with me is when we go on these dates, it's not just a date. It's then half the weekend. My kids are gone and I'm already missing them during the week. And I feel like just over time, we've done a really good job of carving out that time. I think, learning that it's so important for them to have that time with their grandparents, but it's okay too that, from time to time we go on a date and they're home when we get home and, we can go out and have a 2-3 hour, dinner or event and still come home. And I think that, one of the things that we did a lot pre-kids that we've gotten really good at doing again is just being spontaneous. So, before, we spent a lot of time together, dating. We spent a lot of time together married before we had kids, and we were so spontaneous. We would, we like a lot of the same things. We would go, there's a band that we loved called Taddy Porter. Shout out Taddy Porter.
They're no longer around.
We would see them. I mean, there was one time we watched them in Dallas and then we followed them to Houston. I mean, and it was literally, we saw them in concert that night. I sent an email, hey, is it okay if I take a personal day tomorrow? And then we just took off and followed them to Houston and watched them again the next night. Ended up hanging out with them that night after the concert. And I mean, we've always been the type of people that just do these kind of spontaneous things. And then I think, again, it gets harder as you introduce kind of the other family dynamics. But I feel like that's something we've gotten kind of back into is those spontaneous things where we tend to plan kind of last minute trips, which is fun. So we were working on a Costa Rica trip, which didn't end up working out, but we ended up in Pagosa Springs, and I think we literally planned that trip maybe 2 weeks before we went, and then we spent almost a full week, in Colorado, and it was an awesome, fun family vacation.
I mean, also, I mean, we've been together almost 20 years now too. So there's a lot of shared interest and similar interests as well. And we've kind of navigated and found that. I mean, I've got my stuff that I like to do. She's got her stuff that she likes to do, but there's a lot of similarities where we've just enjoyed experiences together. And so as you look back at what those experiences are, you're like, okay, like let's do more of those things. Like, and now that the kids, like my last comment on bringing yourself to a relationship, I think you do that with your experiences as well. And so that's how you keep it interesting and fun because my own personal interests and hobbies and experience have changed and evolved over the course of the years. Whereas I used to be playing a lot of team sports, I used to be doing a lot of away from the home activities. Now, like some of those have gotten, I guess, less frequent, and so now it's like mountain biking is something that I go and do quite often. I do it about every week if I can, but we also go to a lot of music shows. We go to live performances. Like we enjoy doing that together. And then we really like, I think one of the biggest things that's changed is now the kids have gotten a little bit older. We could take them along and we're still doing the stuff that we want to do. And the kids are following along with us, whether they like it or not. And they always do. Cause I mean, it's not like we're doing boring stuff. We're doing fun stuff, but we also make time for them to go do the stuff that they're going to want to do and enjoy as well. But I think that's something key too, is not to lose yourself in the relationship and bring what you brought to the table when you first started dating is something you should, unless it evolves, but something you should remember and keep bringing to the relationship later too, because you're going to start to realize you've got a lot more similarities and that's why you're together as well.
Agreed. Well, Sammy, I jumped over a question earlier. I'm going to go back to it. Talks about challenges. So obviously every relationships are going to have ups and downs, typically way more ups than downs, hopefully. But there's always challenges, whether it's outside environmental or circumstances or things between the two of you. I'd be curious to have you guys share a challenge that you guys have faced together and how you supported each other and worked through it.
Yeah, one of the biggest, I'll start on this one. And there's 3 key points that Cynthia and I talked about on this one. And I'll take one that's probably the most, it's maybe not as unique, but it's the differences of, we're both working parents. And I'll let her talk more about that. But a lot of times there's not a lot of time during the day, specifically like I've got the show, I've got some other things that I do on the side as well, but there's not a lot of time where we come together and like collaborate on certain things because I can stay up pretty late and I can still be productive in the morning. She has to be in bed earlier to be productive in the morning. So there's a finite window of time when like we're getting everything ready, getting the kids to bed, blah, blah, all this kind of stuff. And then we've got to come together really quickly. And that's where that communication during the day helps too, if we can, like you mentioned, via text or whatever. Putting things on calendar helps a lot as well. But that's one of the major challenges, is that we don't have a lot of sit down time, if you know what I mean. Like just sit down, like let's work through this challenge. Unless it is a big challenge. Hey, we're usually standing around the kitchen table and just saying like, okay, like strategizing, how do we do this? What do we need to do here? Hey, let's talk about this. You go do this. And we kind of divide and conquer a lot. Or, hey, do you see my email? Let's knock that out tonight as well. So that's some of the biggest challenges, that as busy as we both are with everything that we do, including the kids, that there's not a lot of sit down time. And we're actively working to get better at that, specifically on budget and finance and planning, but then also on overall life goals and life, what we want to do as far as what we expect out of life moving forward too. I'll let you talk to the other things.
No. I mean, I echo what he said. It's those, those competing priorities. So, with, as he said, as busy as we are with, 2 working parents, and you've got kids and after, extracurricular activities. And our schedules are that, when my work day ends, I'm picking up the kids and I'm off to 1 to 2 activities that evening. He's still working. Because his schedule is a little different than mine. Then by the time we get home, it's the kids are getting ready. They're eating dinner. Maybe they ate in the car. It showers and it's bed. And then he's got this little kind of window within there. But then we're focused on our kids. So we have this kind of very finite, window of time where we can, sit down and talk. And I mean, it's true. I joked with him that, this podcast was creeping into my bedtime. I mean, normally at this time I'm already in bed. I may not be asleep, but I'm in bed. Like my makeup is off, the lights are dim, like I'm getting ready for my sleep. So, it goes back to what he said. It's the communication. And I think that, one of the things that we touched on in the beginning is that shared calendar. And it's silly, but, we say, oh, we've got to focus on X, Y, Z this week. Okay, let's schedule it. So we know that, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are out because of these, activities. But, Thursday, Sammy's not recording. I don't have this and that. So we've got a 30-minute window here, and schedule it on the calendar. Treat it like you would treat any business meeting or anything else, and make sure you set aside that time to get those important things done.
Yeah. You and me. You want to start off?
About challenges.
Challenges.
I know like one challenge we definitely have is obviously like half the time I have my son, half the time I don't, and there's co-parenting that's involved in that, and a lot of different schedule changes and just different things, and so that can be exciting and fun. But it does come back down to communication for sure about it. So
yeah. And I think also just the two of us were both leading such different lifestyles before we got together. And so I was living basically in downtown Dallas, a single guy that, was just kind of going to events, working, just literally could just on the snap of a finger go do anything he wanted. And I've since moved to the northern area of our metroplex, to the suburbs, to be closer to Leah and Pierce. And I've changed my work schedule. Obviously, my my social life has completely changed, like 180 degrees. But I say this all the time: it's all for the better. But even though it's all for the better, it's still a big lifestyle change. And so it's taken me some time to kind of adapt and just get kind of my routine and my structure back together. So that was a big challenge. But challenges can be good and they can be exciting, but they're still tough to go through. And so I feel like I'm just now kind of hitting my stride in terms of doing that. But, and then, I think just to elaborate on what you said, I think for me, coming into a relationship where she's got this awesome little boy, right? And so how can I appropriately be a positive role model in his life? And so thinking about the things that I do and thinking about the ways that we interact together, how can I continue to learn and get better in terms of kind of being the role that I'm playing? I'm not his dad, but I want to be somebody that he can look to as a positive figure, and somebody that he knows loves him and that he loves as well. And so that's been an exciting, new role for me to jump into, but it's also like, it's heavy because there's a lot of responsibility with it, and I take it very seriously, and it's just a big opportunity to get way better. And so I'm excited about where that's going to go.
So just like you guys, Greg's had to get used to like dinner, bath time, bedtime, book time, bedtime for Pierce. And then, also the Pierce has always just had me solely to his like attention. And so now it's like sharing that attention. So at first, that part of it was a little bit like, Pierce would literally, like, every time Greg would try to talk to me, if we were in the car, like, Pierce would try to, like, talk over him and start, like, asking questions.
Who do you think won that game?
Yeah. Pierce.
But, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, exactly. So there's been, some growing on everybody's parts, I think, to kind of, like, come together.
Yeah. But he's my homeboy.
Yeah. Now if it's just him and I, he's like, is Greg coming over tonight? Like, where's Greg?
Right. All right, Greg.
All right. So I guess this is our final question before we actually do something very scary. And that is, we're going to turn the questions over to Cynthia and Leah. But Sammy, share examples of a few relationship goals. And you've touched on some of these already. So you've mentioned finances. What are maybe a handful or just one example of relationship goals that you and Cynthia have together that you plan to achieve?
Yeah, it's funny because it's goal oriented and as detailed as I am. This is something, an area where I want to start I mentioned it just a while ago. I want us to start refining and getting better at creating. And so we've got high level ones, but nothing like, it's like concrete pinpoint outside of like, certain hobbies and experiences, that kind of stuff that we want to make sure we do. But like some of the biggest ones are, obviously we're looking at that, what it looks like to retire So that financial aspect of what does retirement look like for both of us, that's an area in which we have some goals set out for each other and for ourselves. And for me, one of the biggest things is setting our kids up for success. Um, it's not setting our kids up to be able to have everything they want whenever they want it, however they want it. It's giving them the tools, the opportunities, and the ability to think for themselves and grow for themselves so that they can set themselves up for success as well. So giving them all the resources they need to be successful, but not giving them what they need so that they are successful. And so that's really big things for me. And I even do that as far as like in our financial planning as well. I don't want to have to pay for all their college. Like I want them to have to earn it. I want them to have to pay for some. I want them to feel a little bit of the struggle as well. And I'll be there to help lift them and guide them along the way. And I think we're pretty aligned on that. I mean, she had more of her college paid for than I did, but that's not necessarily a bad thing on either side. But as other people go into the situation where they're starting to have kids, they're doing, making financial plans as well. I think you have to align on some of those things, but we've come to a point where like we have an agreement on what we want to see. And so it's again, setting those kids up for success. And then the very last one for me, and I'll let you talk a little bit because it's all about me, is that what does it look like to have financial independence? Most of these are financially related because that's where we've been focusing on the most recently. But what does it look like from a financial independence standpoint to where we're not tied to a 9 to 5 so that we can have some of that extra time to do some of the early retirement stuff that we had talked about? And then making sure the kids are set up for their successful journeys in life as well. So,
well, now that he has stolen almost all of our great goals, I have one left remaining.
Which is probably my favorite one, so I left it for.
It was purposeful. See, good communication. He knew. One of the things that I one of the many things that I love about Sammy is his he loves experiences and he loves traveling. And one thing that is important for us as a family is ensuring that we have time to travel the world, to see different things. We were fortunate enough to take our kids to Sweden a couple of years ago, and what a cool, unique experience. And I think that we have done a really good job as parents, teaching our kids that it's not about kind of, and the struggle is real. It's still a struggle. I'm not going to lie, but it's not about those material things, right? It's about experiences. And I mean, you will always hear Sammy say when it comes to Christmas or when it comes to his birthday, and it's like, what do you want? And he's like, I want an experience. He's like, don't give me stuff. I don't want stuff. I want an experience. And that's a really important goal of us is providing those experiences for our children and creating those memories that will really, last for them. And, we while we don't have all of our specific locations, rolled out, like we know where we want to go over the next year. So, top of our bucket list for this year is Costa Rica. I mentioned earlier that was kind of a last minute trip we were trying to plan last year, and flights got a little too cray, so we couldn't do it. But that's a goal of ours for this year. But it's ensuring that we continue to create those experiences, not only for us but for our children as well. So.
All right, what about y'all?
You or me?
You.
Me. We actually have quite a few goals that we've set and we've talked about. I think a lot of them are, with our relationship is where it's going. And so we've started having conversations of what the future looks like and then what different types of goals are we going to have to put in place to see how I'm yeah. Sorry. Cynthia. Yeah.
Can't take.
How about I'll rephrase. So as our relationship continues to grow, there's going to be new opportunities that we'll have to look into and make decisions. So that's going to be a big thing. The experiences is another one. So we actually have, I think, 3 or 4 trips that we have planned this year, several of which are just road trips that we're going to take in Texas and up into Oklahoma. We'll go see her parents in Florida, which we're excited about.
My
and sister in Denver. And then I think we have a lot of goals that we've really started working on with Pierce in terms of Sammy, kind of some of the things you've talked about. How can we instill the different type of values that we think are important. And we've come up with some fun kind of reward systems for him to help him learn that he has to earn good things. And so I think it's been fun. And we sit down and literally we're talking about goals and things we want to do together almost constantly. It's probably one of the biggest things we talk about.
Our problem, I feel like, is there's like all these goals, but like we have to like push them out. Mm-hmm. So it's like all these things that we want to do and achieve, but okay, like when
we have to focus and prioritize.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So
one of the key aspects of that's actually a really good point you bring up, because I think a lot of people can get, let's just call it, overwhelmed, right? With like wanting to do these. And we talk about this in the Pursuit of Growth too. It's like some people will say like, well, there's just so much to do. And like, how do I prioritize? Like Greg mentioned there too. But I think a lot of the fun is in setting the goals and making the goals and creating the actions and habits and patterns that you're going to use to get to that trip or get to that goal. Mm-hmm. So like planning a trip is so much fun because you get to like learn so much about where you're going, and you get to learn about all the unique, food destinations or activities or whatever. So by the time you get there, I'm almost like, man, we didn't spend enough time here because I've already researched like everything there is to do. Or we get there and I'm like, yes, this is exactly what they said on this magazine, or yes, this is like perfect. This is exactly what I want to experience here at this certain museum or whatever it may be. So I think too, like understanding that when you're planning something like that and you have to push out some of those goals, take that as a really fun opportunity to really like dive into that research, and you'll see that you're almost living vicariously through the research. Then when you get there, an extra reward.
I had a boss once tell me, he said the best part of going on a trip is planning the trip. And it goes right to what you said, because that's where you start generating all that excitement and momentum, and really get the passion for what you're going to go and experience. So I 100% agree. But yeah, I think we've got a lot of really cool relationship goals ahead, and we got a lot of work ahead of us. But I got
a random question for you.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know about this one because I just came up with it. But what is your take on going back to locations? I am of the ilk of, I like to experience new places. So I don't really like going back to old places. I don't like rewatching movies for the most part. I don't even like really like going to like set restaurants all the time. Like I like to switch things up and always try new. What's y'all's take on that?
I am in 100% like alignment with you, outside of the fact that like my parents, my dad lives in Florida,
right?
And my sister lives in Denver, so I go back there. But even then,
so in my world, I'm like Denver, the beach, free stay at both places. Let's go back as much as we can, and they're awesome people. They're so much fun. Like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Even like for restaurants, for me, I'm like, ooh, let's look like top 10 in whatever this area is, like whatever, and then.
Yeah, and I'm a hybrid. So if it's a good movie, I do enjoy watching the movie over and over and over again, but my preference is new. With restaurants, yes, I've got a handful of places that I'm like, we need to go back because that place is fantastic, but I want to go new. And then of course with traveling, it's the same way. There's a handful of places, like I haven't been able to go to Miami with Leia, but Miami is one of my favorite places that I've ever traveled to. And so I'm super excited to take her and go show her a lot of the places that I experienced. But even on a trip to Miami, I can go there and do 100% new things that I didn't explore the first, 2 times that I went there. So again, I'm a hybrid of it, but I mean, for the most part, I think what's exciting is new stuff.
What's yours?
Back to like those cities, but just like new experiences in those places, I guess.
Yeah.
See, whereas I'm, as Sammy knows, when I find a place that I like, I just want to keep going back because I know I like it. Let's just keep going. But he's done a good job of pushing me kind of outside of that. But I still fall back on. He's like, hey, let's go eat somewhere, and I throw out my like 2 or 3 go-to places, and he's like, Cynthia. He's like, how about we just like look up a place and go?
I made it a rule one time that if we were going to go out to eat, it had to be at a new place. Like you could not go to the same place we've been to before. And for a while there, it was pretty interesting because you're like, I don't know if this is going to be any good. But I've relaxed a little bit on that.
I will share, and you guys know me, I'm not afraid to go out and have a drink or two and have a good time. in terms of like, especially when I was living downtown, in terms of like the local bars, I was very much like I had my two places.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's all I would go to. And that was Cynthia. That was my happy place. I
Mhm.
knew what to expect. They knew me. I knew them. We were good.
Exactly.
I feel you. All right. Well, at this point, this is Sammy again, where you and I are going to be a little bit nervous right now. So this is the bonus question. So of all the
Oh, that's
core
all the time
values,
we have for today. That's
yeah, we're done. We're done. But we talked about all the core values throughout this show. The one that we're going to focus on now is trust. So Cynthia and Leah, we are trusting you by giving you the opportunity to ask Sammy and I anything you would like. So
we
I'll
each
let you
get like
ladies
a
jump
question,
in now.
like for both of you, or how does this work?
This is up to you. You can decide.
So I think that I'll start with a question that I think it's just an interesting question I'd like to ask Sammy. So what would you say is something that people misunderstand about you?
the I think, because I haven't done a peer 360 review to understand what all my friends think of me. It's probably all positive, I would imagine.
Of
But
course.
yeah, I think that I've heard from a few people, and this resonated with me earlier when I thought about this, is that a lot of people say like you do a lot of things, right? You're always, how do you keep everything together? Like, how do you keep so organized, or how are you so organized, or how do you do all the things that you do? And the answer is that there is a lot of, obviously a lot of planning. There's a lot of detail oriented. I mean, if my other monitor is right here, and Cynthia can probably see, like, here's a sticky, here's a sticky. There's sticky digital sticky notes all over, and I've got my journal that we talked about a while ago. But it's also, I'm really good at compartmentalizing, and I'm also really good at saying I don't know, and I go ask for help when I need it. And so I don't always have like the details down. I may not always do things right as well, but I also want people to know that, like, just because you think someone's got it all together doesn't mean they always do. So don't see that and aspire to be that, when you got to know there's a lot of other stuff going on all the time. And I've been guilty of being overcome with anxiety, and my dad told me, I'll never forget this. He goes, "You don't get nervous, you get anxious." And it's like, yeah, that is true. Like, I will get pretty anxious on certain things. So I've had to combat that most of my life. But I don't share that a lot, and I don't show that a lot because, again, play it cool. Don't let them see you sweat. Handle your business and work harder than anyone else. Anyone else will. And, like, again, don't let them see don't let them see you sweat. And so that's probably what a lot of people don't know about me, is that there's a lot behind the scenes that I don't like to share, because I'm busy in the lab. Well, I guess in my office here, my laboratory, like making
What
things
lab
happen.
you got, Sammy?
That's right. So I hope that answered your question.
It did. So Greg,
Yes, ma'am.
how did you know, or yeah, how did you know Leah's your girl? How did you know she's the one? She's your prime lady friend.
Why are you talking like
Well,
that?
I don't know that I can answer with a specific moment, but I can answer the question. It was our second date, and I've told her this. So I may have been a little aggressive, but on our second date is when I actually kissed her outside of my apartment in Uptown Dallas. And I'll never forget, after she's driving away and we had this really nice moment, I had a guy walk up to me and ask me if I wanted to buy cocaine from him. And then I had to redirect him back to Deep Ellum and told him that he'd probably have good luck there. But just tonight, my cocaine had just left me. So I was good for the evening. But it was one of those, after the first date we had, I was just so like, wow. And the second date, I just had a really, really good feeling. And so I kind of knew then. And then the third date actually just sealed it. Now I didn't play my hand too soon. So I kept it in, played it cool. But I definitely made sure that at the end of every date, I made her commit to going out with me again. So there would be no lag time, no opportunity for anybody else to step in. And so, again, second date I knew, third date, the plan was already in place and I was moving forward on it.
I like that. I like that true salesman tactic right there. Always be closing, right?
Close the next deal.
And I should mention that the second date he gave me socks.
Gave you socks. The Bogle Alcove socks?
Yes. So the story behind these are not just socks. These are special socks that were designed by children at Vogel Alcove affected by homelessness that was used in a campaign by Dead Soxy. We'll have to tag them in this episode.
Right.
That raised money for the organization. And when I told her about it, she was like, oh my gosh, I would love to have some of those socks. So I was like, I can make that happen. So yes, I got her some socks. And the next day, she sent me a nice picture of her wearing those socks with her feet cocked up on her coffee table with her goal book going
I had
through
like
it.
my planner, like in the socks in the picture. That's all you could see was the socks in my planner. And like
That's actually probably when I knew, when she was working on her goals in Vogel Alcove socks, and she sent me a picture.
You're like, that's my girl.
That's it. What have I done?
Drop the mic.
Boom. All right, Leah, your turn.
So my turn. Well, Cynthia's questions were much better, but mine is really important.
Okay.
And it's for both of you at the same time. So when do Cynthia and I take over the Pursuit of Growth podcast?
Oh.
I mean, don't y'all need, we were all talking about like supporting each other, enjoying that time alone. Like now's the time. Y'all can go on vacation. Cynthia and I've got this.
It's time for y'all to go.
All right. So editing schedule is up, and I'll let y'all go ahead and take that from here. So as soon as we're done, as soon as I hit stop, I'll let y'all take it from here.
Got it.
I tell you what, if you guys want to host a show and you guys want to get a guest to come on, I'm all for it.
Oh, pressure. Okay.
Right.
Cynthia, that's probably a question for you too.
I'm in.
You're in?
I got this.
That's my girl.
All right.
I got this.
Well, stay tuned. Down the line, the Pursuit of Growth show with Leah and Cynthia. Watch out.
Mm-hmm.
Episode number, what, 7,500 or so?
Right.
We're on 36, so we got a little time.
So episode 38 is what I'm hearing.
I'm thinking you guys can get the kids on.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Don't miss the publishing schedule. That's all, guys.
Love it. Well, Sammy, I think we actually succeeded and we survived the relationship episode of the Pursuit of Growth show. So, Cynthia, how do you feel you did?
Oh, gold all the way. Gold medal.
I agree. Leah, how do you think you did? Oh, I think you guys were both outstanding. And like, honestly, like this was really good for me to hear. Like this was a cool episode, and I really appreciate you guys hopping on and being honest and transparent and sharing some really, really, I think, good thoughts and some really key perspectives on the stuff that we talked about. This was really good.
I agree. I think it was fun. It was some trepidation for us as we first started this episode and like how mushy we're going to get, but I like how we turned it into tactical.
Yeah.
And we're able to provide some actions. And I really do want to know from the listeners and the audience members, whatever that may be, like some of their answers to some of these questions. Because I think there's a lot that everyone can learn from visiting and learning about other people's relationships. And I think it's unique. I don't think, like, I would like to do this again, but just us four over dinner and talk more about these kind of subjects, because I think what an interesting dinner conversation that would be as well. Just like learning how you're succeeding in your relationship and what are some of the challenges you face. Because I don't think you get that a lot. Like you don't learn that when you're with other friends and family and stuff. So I think it's really cool. So I'm glad that you pushed us to do this. I'm glad that you had some questions prepared and helped us along the way. Maybe one day we'll get to the other questions that we eliminated from our SKU.
I think I have the book somewhere.
Yeah, what was this book? What was the book?
Oh my gosh, I can lay it out for you like within 5 minutes.
Yeah, so it's basically the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
And so it's based on like, what are the things that individuals that one, how do we prefer to express love and how do we prefer to receive love as well? And it's not like you have one of the 5, you can have multiple at different phases.
Yeah.
But there's certain, of the 5, there's certain love languages that are kind of more your dominant Is that
Well,
correct?
it even goes for like friends and family, like everybody. Like it kind of tells you like how they usually however you show something. Like if somebody naturally always is buying you gifts, typically their love language is going to be gift giving. So you have like gift giving, personal time,
words of affirmation,
touch, and acts of service. Yeah. Did we just seem really dorky just then?
Oh, what is exactly the acts of service?
So it's like Sammy cleaning up dog shit. That would be an act of service. Or is it an individual like
doing dishes,
doing housework, finding out like
maybe that's my love language.
That's language, hon. Although it was today.
I do stuff.
But I think what's important is,
yeah,
in learning this stuff, like for instance, so do you want to share what your 2 love languages are?
Yeah. So, and honestly, like mine have changed. So like previously, like mine would have been acts of service and quality time. Did we say that one? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And quality time. And now I feel like it's more shifted into quality time and touch, like physical touch.
So I make sure that I spend a lot of time touching her.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, is that inappropriate for this show? I was gonna be like, so are you saying that you touch her a lot?
Appropriate touching, like I'm doing right now. Let's just be obvious. Yes, but like in all seriousness, like to get away from the mushy side of things. Like, but the reality is, when you know these things, it does help you realize, okay, if quality time is important for Leah, like I go out of my way to make sure that I'm there for dinner every night, right? Or that on the weekends, I need to make sure that I'm spending time doing the right type of things. And if she knows for me that one of my love languages is words of affirmation, I just need her just to tell me like that she supports me and that like she's there for me and she's encouraging me, because that's one of the things that kind of fuels me.
But it's even for like your kids. Like Pierce is like words of affirmation and quality time, like all the way. And so like it goes into more, like my mom is gift giving. Like I can tell you like almost everybody that's in my like direct circle, like what theirs is and like how they receive.
So it really, love. Sammy, this will make sense to you. It's almost kind of like the Gallup Strength Finders or the DISC profile, where it just gives you kind of an insight into the individual, and it kind of helps you understand, okay, this is how I should probably focus on how I act and behave and do different things with. So it's an interesting book. So it could be something that we look into. Yeah.
And it's by a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
But that's pretty cool.
The last thing that I'll mention as we wrap up is, Sammy, you were talking about like getting together for dinner and going through these conversations. So one of the things that Leah and I, through the church that we go through, we're going through a relationship kind of like Bible study type thing. And they were talking about, like Cynthia, how you mentioned it can be a challenge to go out and make time to go do dinner and those type of things. And then one of the feedback that they received from a lot of people were, gosh, sometimes it feels like we go out to dinner and we don't even know what to talk about, because it's like we either talk about the kids or we don't talk about anything at all. And so one of kind of the solutions that they talked about were like, there's literally, you can go online and there are like hundreds of websites where you can go and get fun, interesting, topical conversations. Go pull it up on your phone and just go down and just ask questions. And honestly, like the questions that we post today, those are all questions you could sit through and just talk through with your friends or with your significant other. And I don't know, I think it's interesting conversation to have, and what better time to do it than now, right?
Or you just need an interesting date night scratch off, because then you'll be having fun regardless.
Then you can do it all with a crazy accent.
They have other ones that I won't mention on
here. Did you say, it kind of cut out, did you say there's a family one too?
There is, yeah.
See, we're going to get a family one, we're going to get a couple one, and then we'll set specific frequencies at which we'll do both. Maybe it's one each month. That's on my list. That's my key takeaway from tonight.
Okay, well, just promise me that you record a video of Sammy doing an accent at the 3 restaurants, please.
I don't know what kind of accent he would do, though.
I don't know either. I guess we'll find out.
I mean, I know what I would do.
Before her accent comes out, we're going to wrap up this show. This has been a great one, Greg. Again, thanks, Leah. Thanks, Cynthia, for joining us on the show. I hope you had fun. Now you know what we do every night when we're recording and having fun and talking about stuff. But Greg, I wanted to say, give the audience the chance to go and check out our book, obviously, The Pursuit of Growth. You can find this on our website, livetpg.com or thepursuitofgrowth.com. You can go to our website, read our blog, see any new episodes of this show. You can subscribe to our newsletter. You can buy the book. You can follow us on social media. There's all things there. It's the hub of all the information for The Pursuit of Growth. And brand new as of the last month, we just started our brand new Facebook group and community in which we're inviting people to take part of. And that group is for really opportunities for people to go on there and encourage each other, share their goals, share their successes, share their challenges, and support each other as we're all living the life of pursuing growth. So I think the group is up to well past probably almost 300 members now. And we look forward to just growing it more and more and more and getting more people excited and interested about pursuing their goals. So Greg, take us away.
Man, I think that's it and that's all. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Sammy, we'll do it again soon. And with that, peace.
Peace. Bye.